Well, we're here with Chris, Kate, and Brian, and we've got our second panel. I know it's almost the end of the day, but I hope you guys will stick through us for one more of these panels. We're going to talk about the redefinition of digital in the connected age. Today, digital is no longer a silo. It's sort of invaded all different areas. It's changed the way that people behave. So that's kind of going to be our topic. To get us kicked off, why don't we just start right here and go down the line and sort of make an introduction and tell us a little bit about your agency so we have an idea of sort of where you're coming from, maybe your background, and then we'll get into some questions.
Sure. I'm Scott Henry, and I lead the technology team at Organic.
Yeah, I'm Kate Swanberg, and I'm the Director of Product Marketing at Koombea. Koombea is a web and mobile development and design agency, so we do full service for early stage startups and enterprise companies, as well as Fortune 500 companies.
Hello, my name is Brian Carley. I'm the Chief Creative Officer at Rokkan, and we're a full-service ad agency. We're heavily rooted in digital, so it's interesting in that we straddle the line between doing things like product and platform design and just straight up like making ads for clients. And it's interesting to watch how clients' needs and generally like just their fears are becoming more pervasive around what digital means, or them not understanding what digital means. So it's a really interesting, exciting time, I think, for what we've been doing, what we're doing now. So, yeah.
Cool. So Brian, how big is Rokkan?
We're about 100 folks in New York, and then we have 2 small offices, one in Chicago and one in Los Angeles. Those are between like 5 and 10 people each.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So we've got a nice mixture of panelists here. This is Organic, which is sort of a larger entity, and then we've got Koombea, that is more on the production side and representing LATAM, right? Mm-hmm. And then we've got Rokkan, that is sort of a mid-size agency in New York, kind of doing a little bit of what both these guys are primarily doing. Yeah. So maybe Chris, let's start with you. How do you think behavior, user behavior, consumer behavior has affected our industry over the last 3 years?
Well, I think that one of the biggest things is that expectations are so much higher now on the consumer side. And on the client side, I feel like, clients expect us to do a lot more with less, so we're having to work with leaner, scrappier teams, and, things are so immediate now that, expectations are just kind of exponentially increasing, and both brands and agencies like Organic are, really having to up our games to keep up with that.
Yeah. What about you guys?
It's been really interesting. I mean, I think if you think about where the shift has happened, just in terms of how people consume stuff now, how consumers consume content, how they get it, and what their expectations are, it's really kind of changed the conversation that we're having with our clients. I think one of the biggest things I feel like everything we do has to work harder now, right? Mm-hmm. And they expect more, they don't want to pay as much, they want it to really make sense. So I feel like every little thing, every little detail really needs to be figured out down to like the tiniest degree. Otherwise you're just wasting their money and they're not happy about that. And also, I feel like there's this conundrum that we haven't quite figured out, which is I think the media agencies haven't caught up yet, based on like, we come up with ideas and concepts and they're really targeted and specific, and then the media is always like, well, we already bought the media, it's just this, you guys have to do this.
Yeah.
Like, okay, that doesn't make sense for any of the stuff we're doing. So there's this, I think there's this challenge right now in terms of like really focusing in on the creative and the ideas and making sure they're smart and they make sense and we're doing the right thing, and we're hitting all the right places and we're getting it to the right people and the devices they're using, and just making sure that those match up with the media working as hard as all the work the agencies are doing too.
Yeah, definitely. And consumers too, I mean, they want more value, and everything is value based pricing as well. People are not willing to pay for something anymore unless it really offers them a lot of value, especially in business to business. And, we're already connected, and it's quite interesting because we're going from that shift from connective to predictive. And right now, with predictive, we have analytics, we have cloud, we have all this big data that we can use now. And especially from the client side, that's what people are looking for now. Now we have all this data. Now we have all this information, and we know what our consumers want. We now need to provide them value for it.
I also think consumers' idea of value has changed. Even down to, I'm not quite sure that clients get it all the time, but they're not looking for value in like the product the client makes. They're looking for value in, because I think one of the biggest shifts right now is we're not really selling, like a client comes out with a product, we're not selling the product. The expectation is the product is great. So when a client's like, we have to tell people what it does, it's like, actually they can just go online and find out what it does from people who are using it, and they're gonna trust those people more than you because they don't trust you saying, our product's great, buy it. Like, no, I don't know that. Of course you're gonna say that, you made it. So how do we change that? Like, well, when we think about we're advertising and marketing to people to buy stuff, it's not gonna be telling them how the product works. It's gonna be telling the story about why it's valuable to them, why it can shift behavior or make something easier or simpler for them, not the features and the functionality. And that's a big shift, even down to when you think about what TV advertising was, where you go on, you'd like hawk a product with it and have a phone number at the end, or talk about how much it is going to cost to go out and buy it. That's changing now. I mean, ads or films, those are the ones that resonate with people the most. They're either jokes or they're films, or there's something that has some sort of emotional connection, because I can find out what your product does in 10 seconds on my phone.
Yeah, the best promotion of a product or service is a good product or service.
Exactly.
Yeah. I was actually thinking about that question. I was thinking, okay, 5 years ago, it's 2010. People had iPhones in 2010. What really was different there? And I was kind of, bouncing off ideas off my team, and people, they had, iPhones, but like Uber didn't exist, for example. And it's almost kind of a cliche at this point to say, oh, mobile first, But I think that really is still a big shift that's happening, where it's surpassing 50% of traffic now. So as much as I sort of cringe at mobile first because it's kind of channel specific, that really has changed, and that we have to recognize that.
No, that's a good point. That's a good point. Kate, you said something earlier when we were chatting before we got started about how interesting it was that clients were sort of asking, you guys as sort of in this production sort of role to step up and say, strategically, what do you think we should be doing? What sort of decisions should we be making? It'd be interesting to get maybe kind of everybody's opinion on that sort of collision course that seems to be happening, where like you've got these consulting companies sort of coming down into the ad space, and then you've got a bunch of advertisers and marketers, no matter if you're in the production side or the agency side, sort of like climbing up into the strategic place and starting to rub elbows a little bit more than maybe in the past. And so maybe elaborate a little bit on what you were saying there.
Yeah, and kind of what you were saying, I almost don't agree with, because we can build excellent products, but it's all up to the product manager and the product marketing manager who makes that successful. Uber has a great product. I mean, there's tons of startups out there who create great products, but a lot of them fail. Right? And why do they fail? Is it the product market fit problem? Is it the product problem? Or is it the marketing problem? A lot of times it ends up being in the marketing or product market fit problem. So and that is something strategic. Usually from a development agency, we only focus on building it. But we hold your hand, and we've had people ask us, we give more of a product specialist, user flow point of view, but after you build the product, then what? And usually we have amazing clients who have the product manager and the product marketing person who can actually push that product and make it successful. So, and also what you were saying with like the media spaces and everything is very content and value driven. I mean, that's how you really kind of create the success in it. Yeah.
So do you think where do you think that strategic, that seemingly, increased strategic need from clients is coming from, where it seemed like, several years ago, digital was like something you bought. Like, we need a website, we need a microsite, whatever. Now they're starting to go, what's our strategy? Why are we doing this? What's happening? Where's that coming from? I mean, I think your example about, people really starting to understand how to create, take advantage of behaviors that people want using mobile devices like Uber, right? It's not a crazy novel idea, but it was the right time, and people were in need of something like that. So how do you see that influencing your guys' organizations? Are you adding those capabilities? Do you change the way you approach things? And you've had a chance to be on kind of another side of it too at Digitas, right? So
well, I think that what at Organic we're trying to shift away from is message-based marketing, where it's because there's a big difference between simply just reaching an audience and actually having them engage with your brand in a meaningful way. And banner ads and pre-roll video and things like that, fundamentally, those are either delaying or distracting from what the person is actually trying to do. And what we're trying to do is find out what audiences want and give it to them in a way that builds the brand and kind of gives them an experience that actually has utility and value. I think we're trying to move away from just kind of pushing the message out.
Right.
I mean, I think Rokkan's sort of taken this position. I mean, traditionally, the agencies, it's 15 years old now, and it came from a place of being more of a digital production shop. I mean, these guys built Virgin America, but they were like the 10th people to work for Virgin America. Like, they helped them get planes in the sky. Our UX team came up with Elevate, the program. They created, the head of UX at Rokkan actually created transparent booking when you fly. Like, it used to be you'd book, and then it wouldn't show you all the taxes and everything until after you got everything down. And they created the system where, like, as I'm going along, it's going to show me all the prices, all the costs, all the stuff that's happening along the way. And I think a big part of that, the strategy was like this consumer first point of view. So we know there's a business need on the client side, but a lot of times the client's not thinking about the consumer need because they're not the consumer. And so a lot of what we've done strategically is embed ourselves in the consumer's shoes. We built the Chipotle mobile ordering app, designed and did all the user experience for it.
I've used
and
that.
the UX team worked at Chipotle. They sat there and they made burritos for people for 2 weeks because they were like, nobody orders the same way. We can easily take your menu and put it on a mobile app and you can click, but there's some guy who comes in and he just wants rice and guacamole in his burrito, and we have to take that into account, right? So a lot of what we've been doing, and then I think the other thing is we think about it more at a brand level, and it's not like we're specifically thinking about we're building an app, and then we do anything digital for JetBlue we've done. We help them sort of do the end-to-end consumer digital experience. And for them, it's not how do we make a website, how do we make an app, but it's really how do we make customer service and the digital experience better. And so we're not just thinking about like, we have to make a new header, a new booking module, widget, something like that. But it's like as we're uncovering it and thinking about it, we're like, does it make the experience better? Is it going to be easier for people to book flights? And so I think we come at it from more of an overarching brand level, and we think about it like brand strategy. It's no longer just a strategy for the one project we're working on, but how is this going to affect everything end to end? Because at the end of all of this, a consumer sees the brand, not that one thing, and goes like, oh, I love that brand, but their app sucks, or like, oh, I hate that app, but I love that brand. It's just like the thing they're interacting with at the moment, and that's the memory they have of it. And so that's going to affect how they think about that brand in general. And so we have to think about it at a bigger picture, I think. I don't know if clients expect that from us, but we do it, because if we don't, we end up, I think, making stuff we're not happy with, and ultimately they won't be happy with. So.
Of course, yeah. And it's interesting from a development perspective, and I was saying a little bit earlier, I mean, we have clients like Samsung and Aetna, but they came to us for more of a project help in development, right? You know, hey, we need some project done in a specific timeline. Can you help us out with that? And now it's shifted within the last 3 years. And a lot of CMOs are coming into us and they're looking to build brand experiences. They're looking to build revenue with mobile campaigns. And yeah, it's just crazy. And of course, with development, you always need to have your capabilities one step ahead. I mean, wearable tech has been around like since I was a kid, but it didn't really grow, right? I mean, now we have Fitbit, now we have iWatch, right? Or soon to be there, right? And now it's actually the timing is right for these types of things. So yeah, I'm sure with all three of our agencies, you have to be that one step ahead. If you're not, your capabilities aren't there, you're not gonna keep moving forward.
They're not necessarily gonna pay you for the extra work that you're doing. They kind of expect it, right?
Exactly.
But yeah, I do think it's shifted how we hire. We have a new head of strategy who comes from RGA, and he's a brand strategist, and we're winning a lot of new business that's not digital based, but we're winning it because we come in with a mindset that's more focused on digital first. And I think brands and clients realizing like their budgets aren't what they were years ago, and they really want to think through end to end how they can use, I'd say digital. I mean, how they can use digital to like really boost their business. And I think the biggest thing that the way this becomes successful in the next 2, 5, however many years is when you can really figure out that space between like the consumer need and the business need, and there's a sweet spot. And I think that comes back to whatever that experience is going to be. I think the biggest thing is clients hire us, agencies and stuff, and sometimes they don't always trust. I think there's this level of trust that has to come from them. Like you're paying us money, we want to do the best thing for you. It's not about us winning awards. It's about, I think what happens is when you can actually create a business change for the client, and at the same time you can create something emotional for the consumer. When those two things come together, then like you've done it. And that's not an easy thing to do, but that's what we're trying to do.
So you mentioned, what I thought was interesting was the idea that digital has sort of expanded what that means. So, it's not just building something anymore. It's like we're getting into work that is non-digital, but it's because we come from digital. Yeah. So what do you think digital means today, to each of you guys, and how do you tell your clients what that means and explain that value proposition in a market where everything's digital? Yeah. Right.
Well, I mean, I think you just said it. Everything is digital. I mean, I liked what you said. User first. We were having a conversation about kind of mobile first, and I think my take on it, organic position on it, is that for a long time it was desktop first, and then mobile was sort of an afterthought, right? And obviously that's not the right way to go about things, but it's not as simple as, okay, well now we'll design a mobile site first and then we'll do desktop after that. That's more of a tactical thing, and we do approach it that way, from a design and development standpoint, but neither of those are always the right answer. It's, what does the user need, and then you start from there, So I don't even think, saying digital first really is the right thing. It's really, user first, and what do they need, and then building from that. Maybe it is mobile first, but you have to start with what problem are we trying to solve, or what value are we trying to create.
So if you had to pick one thing, when you think about being digital, right? So there's something that Rokkan does that is now you're in a space where the world wants more of that, but it's not necessarily a website. Yeah. Right. So how would you describe what that is?
I think for us it's change. We're hungry for clients who want to make a change. You could be as big as American Express, you could be as small as like a startup, but you want to come work with us because we're thinking about what change means for your business and how you're going to get people to change how they think about you. And so we're not in the business of making websites or making ads. We're in the business of helping you think on your feet and change. And that is the blend of strategy and creative and technology, and those three things together are really powerful. And I think when they try to silo them out, or they come in and we have the strategy's already figured out. We have another agency that did that, and we're like, but how does that make it that's cool, we can use that, but we still need to use strategy. We can use the strategy they have, and boom, we need to think about it in a bigger sense. How does it affect everything that you're doing, everything that we're doing? And I think for us, that's the big thing, is how can we help brands make a change? Because the reality is a lot of them need to at this point. I mean, there are businesses that are being crippled by the fact that the world just doesn't work the way it did before. So we have a lot of these clients coming in and go, we need to target young people. I mean, we just won a piece of business for, I don't even know if I'm allowed to talk about it, but it's for champagne.
Do it anyway.
It's for, who cares? It's on the internet. It's for champagne, and their question is, how do we get young people to drink champagne? Because they don't, right? They don't, and if they drink it, they think it's only for New Year's or weddings. And so that is an awesome challenge. We're super excited to figure out how we're going to break that, how we're going to figure that out. And that's not a digital problem or a social problem or even a just a marketing problem. It's just that's what they need to do, or their business is not going to work anymore. And so I think that's where it's starting to shift. But having good clients like that recognize that you probably want to start in this digital space, because it is everything. It is pervasive to the level now where everything is truly digital. Even TV is digital now. Yeah. And TV's not dead, it's not going away, it's just digital now. Yeah.
And to that point, at Organic, we say that digital isn't just our output, it's our input. Because using data to kind of understand user actions and needs and being able to measure that and iterate accordingly is a big part of what we do. So it goes both ways. It's not just kind of pushing digital things out there, it's using inputs to make smart moves.
Yeah.
So how do you think that shift, right, it has changed client expectations? And what keeps them up tonight? I mean, one of the best adages I've always had for ad agency, and I mostly when you're talking to salespeople or account people, and it's like you got to figure out what keeps them up at night, and that's what we're going to provide the help for. You know what I mean? It may not be what they're asking for, but you got to figure out what keeps. So what do you think keeps them up at night today, as opposed to last year or the year before? What's different today?
Oh, I mean, I think some of it's probably fundamental and keeping up with the marketplace and not falling behind. I think probably part of it is that things, I used the word immediate earlier. Things, you have so much less time now. Expectations are so high that if you don't get it right, whether it's a mobile site that doesn't work or whatever, like, okay, you're done. I'm going to move on to the next one. I know I'm certainly like that.
Right.
So I think they're probably very concerned about getting it right away the first time and not losing that customer to somebody who's ready to say, hey, we're doing it right.
Yeah, completely. I mean, instant gratification, not just in consumers, but in clients and in business is 100% what's happening. I mean, we get clients who are like, we want to build an MVP in 15 days. And we're like, why the rush? I mean, of course we can do it, but I mean, they have these needs that need to be met, and they need someone to help them with that. And there's another thing, but I'll let you go.
I was going to say, I think what probably actually keeps them up at night is money, concern about cost. I think what should be keeping them up at night is their brands becoming irrelevant, because that can happen really quickly, especially with, another industry we work in is healthcare, and you're watching companies like Oscar pop up to take on like these giant healthcare organizations. And they're scared, they're like, holy crap, these guys, they're very localized, but they're making it, whether it's simple or not. I don't think healthcare is a simple topic or a simple business model, but they make it, there's companies that are coming in and making it seem like it's really simple, and people are going, oh, that's so easy. That sounds good. Those other guys, those big ones, are really complicated. I don't want to deal with that. And so I think you can very quickly, these larger organizations, they're going to have to deal with this more and more, because there are people coming in and changing the way people consume and get stuff and just adding immediacy to things. Look at a company like Amazon, who's clearly like they just continue to test until they get something right. And add in like Amazon Now, or you can get something delivered in an hour. It's crazy. And then you've probably got all these other companies who have been testing that, but they didn't do it first, and now they're going to be.
I saw an interview with the Amazon CEO, and they asked him, "Are you worried about the company that's coming along is going to, disrupt Amazon?" And he had an interesting answer. He kind of said, "No, I'm not, because I know it's inevitable."
Yeah.
That's maybe a little bit of a BS answer, but I kind of thought it was, interesting take on it. That it's, it's going to happen. All we can do is just keep going and try to.
Yeah, exactly. I think they have a good point. They're just keep doing new things, and they have the ability to do that, which is great, which is cool. But there are going to be these younger companies out there that are figuring this stuff out faster and quicker, and it's going to be inevitable for them. But I like that they're the way they're doing it is, and this is what I think most clients need to start doing, is just being a little bit more brave about what they should be doing. And Amazon's a company that like, well, we don't know if it's going to work, but we're going to try it. And if it works, we'll keep going with it. And if it doesn't work, we'll fold it up and we'll try something else. And I think getting clients to be able to shift faster and make decisions quicker, and it's always tough to do that. But when some of these companies, they actually start doing that, I think they'll start to see some real change.
Well, they're their own disruptor, which is what, when you have a ton of money, you can afford to do that.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's also a wonderful way to approach business, where they've got teams of people thinking, if we wanted to take ourselves out tomorrow, what would we do?
How would we do it?
And they're proactively trying those things, which is really cool.
Yeah.
How, other than sort of people in that Amazon stage, just curious, that's how they're adapting to this world, right? They've decided that's their model, but they've got all these factors that allow them to do it. They're big. They have a lot of excess cash. They can do things like that. Yeah. What about smaller clients or mid-sized clients? Like how do they adapt to that changing condition?
I think what I would say is that you have to plan to iterate from the beginning, and you have to set up smart measurement points that you can learn from, and that has to be part of the plan right from the get-go. Okay, we're going to measure these key things, and we're going to learn from them, and then we're going to iterate based on what we learn from them. I think you don't have to be a big company to do that. I think it's just planning smartly from the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah, always leave room for iterations with any product you do. And you said money. Like, that's huge, especially for a smaller client, and spending money on something and wondering, I mean, for me, my biggest thing is the retention. What's the retention? You can get people using your application or website or whatever, but what's the retention, or what's the I mean, you can measure it easily with some metrics with e-commerce just by how many people have bought it, right? Is everything working? But with more complicated apps, you need to go in and set up the entire funnel from sign up to point of purchase and see who's coming back. What are those users? How many of the users? What's the retention rate? Ideally, you want 40%, and that's a high number. But all the way to the point of purchase, I mean, are you actually making money? And for people who are making that decision, that is scary. That's scary because that is all on you. Even when we build our own in-house products at Koombea, I mean, that's something we have to deal with. Our retention, that metric is really important.
Yeah.
So other than sort of staying, trying to be your own disruptor, sort of staying out in front of the game, how else do you help clients define, what success looks like in this connected age, or this sort of post-digital age, or whatever you want to call it, that we're in now, where everything's kind of digital? How do you help them define what success is?
That's a tough one, because I think everybody has a slightly different idea of success.
Yeah.
I mean, we do, I think, like any other agency, we probably do a lot of the same stuff in terms of just looking at setting up KPIs, goals. This is what we need to meet. This is what we need to hit. I think I said this before, but I do think that the what success looks like is when you're, I think, really making some sort of change in the business, right? And I think, to your point, even quick iteration, like setting up a plan with a client to iterate quickly, so you get them sort of into this idea of like, we can do this quick, we can turn quickly. In order for that to work, you also have to have success very early on. Because if you're continually iterating and it's not working, they kind of get into this thing like, guys, we're not seeing anything happen. Maybe this process doesn't work. And then they a lot of times will cut it off and be like, yeah, this isn't working. I don't think we want to do this.
Right.
Or just keep spending money on this if it doesn't work. So, but I do think that it's getting serious with them upfront on like what success should be. And I think even still today, those conversations are hard, because they have in there, you still have clients who are like, success is 1 million Facebook likes. And you're like, those don't matter anymore. Right. A year ago they did, but they don't matter anymore.
Yeah.
Like, what? Are you serious? They don't matter anymore? And I think just because it shifts and changes so quickly, it's hard to figure that out. And when we first started working on JetBlue, the biggest success we had with them when we relaunched JetBlue.com with a completely new design, user experience, was in the first month it decreased calls to the call center for user complaints by 98%. And that, one, saved them tons of money, but two, showed them that people understood how to buy airline tickets on their site with no problem. And that was success. I mean, success was probably for them on a piece of paper, like what the revenue is going to be based on ticket sales. But when they saw that, and then they saw that like that also decreased a different cost, so all of a sudden like, oh wow, this is really successful. And that was proof that what we were doing was working, and that gave us, I think, the runway. I made an airline joke. That gave us the runway to sort of like start to really iterate on what the future of this relationship could be and what we could do beyond just help that make that user experience better. But yeah, I mean, I think it's different for everybody, and there's no good answer to that. But I do think it's when you can make a great product, and you can also have that product make real change for the business in some capacity. Those two things together will do it.
I can give you sort of a touchy-feely answer, maybe. And I think that there's something to be said for doing something that you can be proud of.
Sure.
And that I've been talking a lot about this idea of being value-centric versus message-centric, but Organic did a campaign for Kimberly-Clark. They make the pull-ups diapers. And we did a campaign called the Big Kid Academy, and it was basically a tool for parents who were potty training, which I'll be learning about pretty soon. And it was something that was really useful to them and supportive, and kind of gave them something that really, made their lives a little bit better. Maybe a little bit, but made their lives better. I was with our executive team and I asked, what's the campaign that we've done most recently that we're really proud of? And that came up right away, because it's something that we can really be proud of. That's not just kind of pounding a message home. It's actually giving a branded experience that really has utility, has value.
Yeah. I mean,
There's KPIs all over the place, but there's
Yeah.
there's something to be said for like, this is,
Yeah.
we did something good.
Yeah.
yeah, and I wanted to
absolutely.
say something like in the middle of what you said and what you said because, yeah, I mean, they're going to be setting up KPIs to figure out what success is. But, I mean, really, there's no failure. If there's a product, you either keep, kill it, or pivot it, I mean, and move it in a different direction. So, yeah, and I guess kind of like the touchy feel is, yeah, there's no real failure. And like Amazon, I mean, if you're good at what you do, you A/B test everything, right? And you find out what works and what doesn't. If you can do that efficiently, then you can figure out what works faster and not really, fail.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll just add this. I think we have a lot of clients who think that when something is digital, that it means it should be cheaper than what they do for like traditional media, and that I think that's a big barrier
That's
in
fun,
general
yeah.
because what that ends up doing is it does stuff like cut A/B testing.
Yeah.
Like, we only have enough to do this, so
Right.
we won't A/B test it and find out if we should shift it and change it. We'll just go forward with this one thing, make it, and then you're in the situation where if it doesn't work, you know what you could do to change it, but there's just no money left to make that change.
Yeah.
And I think that's a barrier that I don't know how we get through that, but I think
Room for iterations.
Yeah, we need to start thinking about the fact that just because like something is digital doesn't mean it necessarily costs less, or that you should put less into it. And I think that it doesn't mean it costs immeasurably more, but it might just be like a little bit more, and you could ultimately end up with something more valuable.
Well, and that's kind of the art and the iterative piece to it.
Yeah.
Right? I have a friend who uses an example that if you hire a bricklayer, you'll get a wall.
Yeah.
If you hire an architect, you'll get a beautiful structure, right? And the reality is there's a lot of things that go on in that architecture process that you could cut and you could skimp on, you could change, but you're just reducing it more and more and more down to this thing that you ultimately can't get away from, which is just building the structure. Right. So.
Yeah.
What about over the next, I guess, if you had to think about the next 6 months, so we're at South by and everybody's talking about what's the next big thing, and there's a lot of brands here that are trying to stay in front of the next 6 to 12 months. If you had to sit down with your clients and say, there's a lot of things to think about, there's a lot of trends and there's a lot of things going on, but what's the one thing you would tell them they should really spend some time thinking about and how it relates to their organization? I know it's hard not having an organization right in front of you, but what would that be?
Well, I mean, 6 months is going to go by, like
Right.
that. And I mean, if I was going to focus in on just one kind of, sort of fun thing, I think we're not going to be talking about mobile first next year. I think that's, it's a little too channel specific, but I think that there is still a lot of room in location and context, especially in the retail space. You look at, places like CVS or something like that, and consumer packaged goods. I think, building experiences that are hyper local and immediately relevant. I think that there's still a lot of headroom in that space. I think we'll see more around that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's there's still a lot of companies that don't get mobile first, right?
Yeah.
I'll be like shopping online. I'm like, why isn't this mobile responsive? Or it'll be a mobile version, and I'm like, I can't purchase you.
Well, and to our earlier point, that's where in today's world it's just kind of like, all right, next.
Yeah, what's up
you're
next?
done.
Yeah. But so if you are someone who has taken advantage of mobile first, I think that the Beacon right now is just booming a lot in the 6 months. Like, I think South by Southwest, the app they're doing right now is doing it as well, and ESPN Sports, ping notifications. You download the app, it lets you know by push notification where your seat is, or you pass by the merchandise, and it lets you know, oh, hey, something's on sale, right? I think that in retail specifically is going to be booming. All the Apple wallets and the NFC technology. We have Apple Wallet, Google Wallet, we have Bitcoin Wallet.
Payment, yeah.
Yeah, payment is something booming as well. Banking, I think that there's room for improvement. Chase has been the leader in that. I think that other banks need to step on board. So, yeah.
Yeah. This is a tough one. I know what my wish is. I'm just trying to think about what it actually is. I think technology-wise, I think that Beacon's going to be a big deal, especially with seeing things like Watch come out. It's just like that's gonna start to change. I think that will probably be more than 6 months from now, but I do think next year when we're here, we'll be seeing more of that integrated into everything that we do. I just read an article. I was getting coffee before I came here, where a guy was saying that the announcement of the watch was really interesting because they downplayed it in that, the thing they don't want you to know is that they're basically building this thing that starts to negate what their phone does, that they spent like, a decade turning into like this sacred thing. And they're saying, we made this thing and you kind of don't need your phone as much anymore. But we're not ever going to tell you that. But I do think there's something interesting in wearables and that technology, and how my hope is that it gets to a place where it gets us back to having more face-to-face connection, and that's how it really starts to make a difference. And you see people doing a lot less of this, and it might just be a quick that, and then you can continue your conversation. So I'm hoping like in the next 6 months to a year, we're seeing that technology get better and smarter and more useful. And I think that'll be the biggest thing, is when that becomes really useful and it's not just buzzing you every time you get an email, or just monitoring your heart rate, but the utility is actually adding value to it, where you can pay for things, but it's adding some
the
value
health
to
as
your
well.
life.
The health as well, yeah.
Yeah, and I think someone will perfect that at some point. There'll always be iterations on it. It was interesting to hear when Nike was like, "We're not actually going to make a device anymore because why would we? These guys, there's a ton of technology companies that are going to do this way better than us. So we'll focus on making sure the software is beautiful, and then we can let other people worry about the devices." So I think we'll start to see a little bit of a shift there. But I think for me, like in the next 6 months, if I was talking to a client, I would say this is the next 6 months to a year to 2 years. It's time to really start being brave about what you want to do. And the other thing I'd say is be careful with inspiration. Uber's awesome. That doesn't mean you need to make an Uber. That other company's campaign was great. It won a ton of awards. It doesn't mean you should copy it because it was great. Originality is really important. That's why those things are great, is because no one had done them before and they were original. So it's really tough to get a brief from a client and on it. It's like, we want something like this campaign. It's like, that's the worst thing you want to see.
Right.
Because it's niche, unless you're doing something like that, but it's more niche.
Potentially,
in my opinion.
But I would say that might come down to that's more of a tactical thing than an idea thing. So I think it's making sure, making clients aware that the reason they hire people like us is to come in with a completely fresh point of view and not to take something that they've already seen and try and make a version of it. That's gonna be really important in the next couple of years, because the more there's similarity between products, between ideas, between concepts, the one that's the best is the one that's going to win out, and the other ones will just sort of fall away. So making sure what you're coming in with is going to be original and will make some sort of lasting change.
So you believe in going to market first is the best way?
I think it depends on what you're making, but potentially, yeah.
That's a good answer.
I would say I do believe that.
It gives you a huge advantage. Yeah.
So it's interesting because there was a whole other conversation yesterday about, and there was a lot of strong feelings about having something really, the old idea that going to market first was the sort of the best thing, sort of rapid iteration, just get something out of the market.
Yeah.
And then there was a contradictory agreement about like how everybody expects everything to work so well and so quick
Right.
today,
You
and
need to
expects
take-
such responses that you almost have to take a little bit of time, because a bad experience will have somebody write something off.
Absolutely.
Where do you guys, that was supposed to kind of be our last question to segment out, but I think this is interesting. What sort of, where do you sort of see that working, not working, or what's your?
I'll just answer because you asked me real quick. I think
Yeah.
I was speaking less about something like a product or an app, and more about like if I'm even thinking about a creative campaign. Right?
Sure. We're going into between the campaigns and
I think
products.
that is probably like that for a campaign. It doesn't necessarily mean first to market. Makes sense, but it does mean that when you come out, the thing you're saying is fresh and unique, and people will go, oh, wow, I never thought of it that way.
I think for campaigns, that makes sense.
I would say I think it's very challenging when it comes to like releasing an app or something like that, is you want to be first to market. At the same time, I think we've seen situations where look at Friendster and Facebook, right? I mean, we all were on Friendster and MySpace and stuff like that. I mean, they iterated until they got the user experience, the interaction, all the tools were right, and then you watch those other ones kind of die off. Yeah. And so first doesn't necessarily always mean best. And sometimes you will get people who copy the idea and then they iterate on it and they make it just way better, and then it doesn't work anymore. So, but I think that's always the challenge, especially when it comes to like a product. Yeah.
I have a question. Do any of you guys use Skype and Slack?
We use Slack pretty much exclusively.
See, but Skype was first, and why did you change to Slack?
I mean, just because it has what we need,
Which is?
I think people use them differently.
Yeah.
Like even though they
Yeah,
do the same thing,
Well,
I
they're
think
adding-
Skype
yeah.
is seen as like it's a video chat.
Yeah, exactly.
And Slack is like Slack is like the inter-office better instant messenger now.
It's like the
And
mothership of
yeah, and it's like
communication.
Which
I
is
think
funny because
that's-
it's like it was like the AIM, but now
Right.
it's for Teams.
Right,
yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So I think, I mean, especially in business and where we work, I think something like Slack is really valuable. Although I find that when I log on, it's a lot of like my employees just with really like the little like communities they've made,
Yeah,
or like
channels.
all the channels that they have. Next, there's some really ridiculous ones on there that are like if there's like the animated GIFs one, and it's just
Yeah.
like why aren't you guys working? Why are you looking for animated?
Oh,
GIFs?
you're one of
Posted on a
those,
Slack
okay.
channel.
It turns into like Reddit
No,
for
and then I go
organization,
find,
you know,
and
you
then I
start
go
finding-
find one and I put it in.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but no, I think it's I don't know. It's I think that's just a perception of what that thing is. I think you know what Skype's really interesting in that I think people still think of them as.
Yeah. Well,
video
Slack
chat.
is now integrating.
Yeah.
They bought out. I forget which company it was, but yeah. So now they're going to be integrating voice. That's been something people have been really heavily
That's going to be cool.
asking for. Yeah, because right now it's like I'm using Slack and I'm using Skype, and I'm just like I don't want to keep going back and forth
Right.
into these two different applications when they're kind of the same thing but kind of different. So, yeah. I think that's a good example of
Yeah.
what we're talking about.
Yeah.
So yeah.
When you asked the question, I was ready to say being first to market is most important, but honestly, the more I think about it, I think getting it right is the most important thing, and coming up with something that is simple and intuitive and a great user experience is probably more important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Use
agree
it.
with that.
Yeah.
That's what I found so fascinating just in this period is just the change in behaviors. You know, like you use that as an example. Like people expect things so much faster, almost to the point of where it's irrational.
Yeah.
Because we've just been trained by our phones and things
Right.
that things happen so quickly that you just think, you know, why doesn't this work? And then there's so many different apps for every little thing that like if you have one little thing go wrong, it's really easy for somebody to say, well, I'm
Yeah.
out of that, I'm into the next
Yep.
one.
It's
So-
like that Louis C.K. bit about the Wi-Fi on the plane, where like they announce that they have it, and then they announce that it's not working. And the guy next to him's like, "That sucks." It's like how quickly the world owes you something you knew existed 5 minutes ago.
Right. While you're sitting on a couch flying through the...
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you guys spending some time with us. I know South by is a busy time and it's hard to step away and have a conversation like this, but I appreciate it.